Hey friends, just letting you know we're going to get started here shortly. Just waiting for all of our attendees to arrive. Thank you for your patience. Enjoy this amazing music by Westbound Situation. Hello, everybody. Just don't want to end the music. All right. Let's get this show on the road. Thank you for joining us today, Farm Virtual Connections. We are super excited about today's topic. We, as in me, I'm very excited about this personally. I hope you are too. Charlie Mossbrook, Farm Board President, is in the house, and I know that you will handle letting stragglers into the waiting room while I do my spiel. If this is your first time attending, or if you happen upon us out there in the virtual land of Facebook and or YouTube, we are super glad you joined us. This is the regular weekly event called Tuesday Tech Talks, sponsored by Farm Virtual Connections, the Folk Alliance Region Midwest. We have been holding these Tech Talks for nearly a year now, almost every single Tuesday, where we take bite-sized pieces of tech and explain them in basic terms, or we attempt it anyway. Members of our community share their knowledge. This is just one of many things that we've been offering through Farm Virtual Connections, and you can find out more about that at farmvirtualconnections.org. Today's Tech Talk is all about live streaming again. Yes, because of course it's the #1 topic, but we are way overdue for this one, I think. There are people out there who are doing live streams where there's reverb and effects, and I just am intrigued by this, and I think I'm not alone in wanting to know how this happens. And I happened to be part of a live stream show a couple of weeks back where the wonderful, talented young man who was running the show was explaining this. Or was doing it. I'm sorry. He was adding effects to the live stream, and I needed to know how. And after he told me, I said, well, come do a tech talk. So Jacob Warren is one of those multi-talented young men. He's a virtuosic bass player, and I think we probably say bassist in our world. But he's also a pal and a really smart guy when it comes to tech. And he's been running live streams for these local venues and other folks, as well as performing his own music. So we're really excited that he's here today. He's going to give about a 30-minute talk demo on this topic, and then we're going to open up to questions. For those of you unfamiliar with our question and answer process, we're going to use the raise hand feature. You're not able to actually unmute yourself, so we're going to have you raise your hand if you have a question, and you'll get moved to the top of the queue, and we'll take those questions in order that you raise your hand. Also, you can use the chat feature to ask your questions, and hopefully by now you know where to find all those. The chat is the little thing that pops up at the bottom of your screen. You click on the word chat and it pops up. You are only able to chat with me directly, the host, or Charlie Mossbrook, but don't chat with him. He's going to be busy. and don't chat with Jacob. He's going to be busy. So send your questions directly to me, and I'll make sure that they get thrown into the queue. If you're not familiar with the raise hand feature, you'll find that now, hopefully, in your newly updated Zoom. In the reactions section, there's a big bar at the bottom of the reactions. You'll find that in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. What else? Am I forgetting anything else? I'm sure I am. I always do. But I think it's time for me to turn it over to my buddy, Jacob Warren. Jacob, it's time for you to unmute yourself. I'm really, really happy you're here. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks so much to Annie for inviting me. Yeah, nice to see all you guys. I just want to go over a few housekeeping things that's going to sort of give you the rundown on how we're going to work through this topic. So first things first, I've created a demo live stream on my Facebook page, and I'm going to just send that in the chat right now to everyone so that you can go check it out when we are going to use it. So we're going to be actually going over to that live stream and kind of looking at what we've done to kind of hear the effects and what it's doing to an actual live stream. So there it is for everyone. You should have it in your chat now. Let me just close that. Let's see. Cool. And then the other thing is I'm going to be doing this 3 ways. There are so many ways that you could add effects to a live stream. We're not going to cover all of them today. I've kind of divided it down into 3 levels of commitment. One, you can do totally for free with freeware software that you can get on your own computer. Nothing new required, nothing paid required. The next level is going to be integrating with the DAW. And that will have specific benefits that I'll talk about when we get there. And then the third option will be some of the lower tier or mid-tier equipment that you can buy that just ups the quality and makes it a little bit easier to do stuff like adding effects. And that comes with its own benefits as well. So yeah, DAW is a digital workstation. Thanks, Annie. Digital audio workstation. So let's get started. We're going to start with the first easy option. So I assume since you guys have been navigating this world of live streaming, you've probably heard of OBS before, and I know that there have been a number of presentations here on OBS. Today we're not going to necessarily be going over the basics of OBS, although I'll try to take it a little bit slower. But let's talk about just how you integrate effects directly into OBS, and then you can output that to your own live stream. So I'm going to share my screen here so we can see everything. All right, cool. So I have got OBS up here right now. Now, for those of you who are familiar, you know that you'll find a lot of the things that you need down in these different panels, and you can actually change which panels are there. So you're going to set up your scenes the way you want them. Right now, I've just got my main scene, which, I'm actually going to go back here. So my main scene, which is just a camera, and then my audio equipment. And the reason they're 2 separate things for me is because you can see I actually have microphones back there. So these guys right here. And I'm routing those in on their own. And then I've also got the camera as its own input. So OBS actually has its own built-in ability to add effects to the sound. And that is going to be found by finding your audio source. So for me, it's this virtual little microphone icon. And you just right-click on it. And you're going to get all of these different options. Now, the way to add effects is actually under filters. It actually kind of treats audio just like it would an image, right? If you imagine like you have your camera up and you want to put a filter on to make it look slightly bluer or a little blurry or change the quality of it, that's a filter. So it uses the same terminology for audio. And you go here and you're going to be greeted with this scene. I've actually got a plugin already in right now. I'm going to remove it so you can see what it looks like completely empty. All right, so here we have a completely empty filters queue. And just like when you're adding sources or adding scenes to OBS, you're just going to go down here and click this plus button. And it's going to give you a whole host of options. Now, there are built-in options in OBS. To my knowledge, none of them are reverb, and they're not necessarily made for music making. So what we're going to be looking at today is what are called VST plugins. And some of you guys may be familiar with what those are from working in a digital audio workstation or DAW. For those of you that are not, I'm going to explain it in a second here. So we're going to add that, and we can just say, okay, name it whatever we want, and then we'll go here. let's just pause for a second and talk about what a VST is. So a VST is basically like a program that emulates some sort of effect digitally. So you can have VSTs that do reverb, you can have VSTs that do compression, you can have VSTs that do all sorts of things. And some of them are paid, like you can buy VSTs to download and integrate with your DAW or OBS. And some of them are freeware. So just doing a web search like Reverb VST or Freeware Reverb VSTs, you'll probably find a whole host of options. I know there are tons of articles that people have written on what their favorite freeware VSTs are. But that's basically just what it is. You download it, it's just a .vst file. They're going to all hopefully go into one folder on your computer, and then OBS will see that folder and allow you to select VST. So once you get your VSTs that you like, or if you already have VSTs that you like, you can select this VST option, and then you're going to go to your select a plugin, and you'll see I have a bunch of VSTs in here that do all sorts of different things: distortion, compression, reverb. We're just going to put a basic reverb plugin on right now and see how that works. So let me just see, gotta find it. There we go, Real Verb Pro. So we'll put that on there. And now that we have our plugin applied, it's applying to that microphone, we're actually gonna open up the interface. And this is where it's gonna look like it looks whenever you work with it in your DAW. Right now it's rendering a little bit small because I'm scaled up for you guys, so sorry about that. But I'm just gonna change the amount of reverb. I'm gonna put on 8%, and the reason I'm doing that is because I've played with this reverb. I know what I like the sound of. Let's get the right preset as well. Okay, cool. So now we've got our filter applied to our audio. So I'm going to close that out. All right, so at this point, why don't we head on over to the live stream for 1 second, and we're going to actually hear what that sounds like in the actual live stream context. So everyone can find that link. For those of you who are not in the Zoom webinar, the link or the live stream is actually just on my personal Facebook page, Jacob V. Warren. So if you look for that on Facebook, you should just be able to pull it up and you'll see the live stream there. So I'm going to switch now to the scene where I've got my audio and
to Jacob. Sorry, I just want to. I linked to it out in the live stream.
Thank you. Great. So there should be a link waiting for you there too. So I'm going to mute myself on Zoom, and we're just going to all jump over to that live stream for 1 second, and then we'll be right back.
This is so cool. Am I the only one that can't hear him? Jacob, I don't think we're hearing you. Sorry.
Did you want a fresh coffee?
All right, so it looks like I gotta restart OBS. Sometimes it likes to disconnect. I've got too many audio sources happening at the same time. Here we go, let's see.
I'm just glad you're doing this and not me. That's all I got to say. This is amazing, though. It's really kind of fun to have this. Yeah. Would it make sense for you to share that screen of your Facebook?
Well, it wouldn't have the same effects because it wouldn't be going streaming. It's good now. I fixed it. So if everyone would just head back there one more time, it'll be there.
All right.
All right, cool.
Nope. Oh, there it is. Wow. Yeah, it worked. It was great.
All right, cool. So we're back on the other one now. So you guys can hear that that's just a very simple way, just going straight through OBS into using a VST to apply any effect you want. And now we kind of skipped over a very basic topic about effects, but why on earth would you want to apply effects? I mean, I think for some of you, you might know why. But for me, it kind of goes beyond just wanting to have that ring to soften my sound. The reason that I think it's very important in a live stream context to add effects is that the delivery of the sound is very different than a real live concert. And when you're trying to create a space that makes people feel like they're at an actual concert, you want it to sound as close to what a concert would sound like in a room as possible. But the issue is that people listen on so many different devices. I mean, for all of you, some of you are wearing headphones. Some of you are probably watching on your phone. Some of you are on a computer. Some of you may have really expensive studio monitors that you're listening through right now. The range of quality of device that people listen back on is so varied that you need to create a signal that is going to sound as good as it does for the high-end people, for the low-end people. And so if you've got the ability to add reverb, make it sound like you're more in the room. If you've got the ability to add compression, that's another one that kind of levels out your audio so that you don't have this big dynamic range. Because phones and low tier headphones, they can't handle the dynamic range. So people are going to be constantly asking like, I can't hear you when you speak. Can you talk louder? I think we've all seen that on live streams, using nicer mics where it's just the range is too big. So when I'm running a live stream, I'm adding effects, one, to just kind of up the quality of the sound, make it sound more like you're in that space, and then also to level everything out so that no matter what people are watching on, they get a good experience. Yeah, cool. So that is the OBS way of doing it. I'm just going to do a really quick recap before we move on to the next one because it's super simple. So just, I think, 3 steps really. Number 1, set up your scenes, right? Get your audio going, and I'm going to share my screen again here so you can see. So number 1, you set up your scene, route your audio in. Number 2, you just right click and go to filters. And number 3, you choose VST and add your filter, whatever you want. Now those 3 steps kind of assume that you already have a VST, but believe me, it's very easy to find decent freeware VSTs these days. And all you need to do is go do a search online and you should be happy with a lot of what's out there. All right, cool. So that is number 1. Yeah.
Jacob, sorry. Actually, I'm going to interject here now because this was a question that I found too. So like while you were talking about VSTs, I went out and Google searched it just so I could find a link. Do you have any recommendations? Because you know how sometimes there's so many different places to download a software. People are wondering like how it's reputable, how you're getting, the good stuff. Like I saw UAD. Like, if you have any recommendations on that, that'd be really helpful, I think.
Yeah. So as far as freeware VSTs, I haven't used any freeware in a long time. So I don't have any specific recommendations. Whenever I need a piece of freeware software, though, the best thing you can do is just go to as many sources as possible to see what people say. And that's why I said when you search VST, like, if you want, let's say you want to add reverb to your stream, but you don't have a VST, your best course of action is going to be to search VST, reverb, like best freeware. And you're going to come up with all of these articles from a bunch of different places. Some of them good, some of them probably not so good. But if you read through them, you're going to start to see, okay, this one keeps popping up in a bunch of different articles. Maybe I should take a look. And then if you become interested in that one, the next step that I do is I search specifically, like, let's say it's called like mine, like RealVerb Pro, right? VST. I search that and I look at people's reviews of it. What are people saying online? So I don't necessarily have any specific recommendations for freeware ones, but it's very easy to weed through that if you just take the time to read a lot of those compilation articles that are out there. Now, also, if you have a DAW installed on your computer, more often than not, DAWs will have built-in VSTs. So you might not realize that you actually already have VSTs on your computer. Or, as I'll get to with the final option for adding effects, there are some devices that come with VSTs. And we're going to talk about that later. Does that answer your question, Annie?
Muted. Sorry. Yes. Well, yeah, no, that was great advice. I think that really helps. Thanks. And I
Yeah.
did post a link to the one that I found that I think was something
Great.
that you mentioned, but yeah.
Thank you. All right, so those are your 3 steps for doing it directly in OBS. So I'm going to talk about 2 slightly more advanced versions that come with benefits, and then we'll have our Q&A in a little bit here. So the first more advanced way of doing this is actually routing your audio through your digital audio workstation first, and then into OBS later. And this is the way that I actually do it for my live streams, and the reason is because if I'm routing it through my DAW, I can actually make a recording of a stream at the same time as streaming it. And I think you all probably know that when you're streaming, it's not actually sending out the complete raw signal, because that would be way too much data for most internet connections to handle. So what it does is the computer compresses everything. It compresses the video, it compresses the audio, takes away what it decides is the fluff, the not important part, and then packages that all up into a smaller bundle and sends it to wherever you're streaming. So I like to record first so that I have a backup file of the clean audio that I can actually edit later if I want to use the video for any, like say promotional material or something like that. So for the organizations that I work for, we use a platform called Crowdcast, which actually gives you the option to re-upload a video later after the stream is over. So what we do is we actually record on site both audio and video in 4K, and then I re-render the video so it's a much higher quality video and re-upload that again, so that anyone who watches the replays of our live stream has basically like we did a studio recording experience. So let's learn how to do that, and it's not actually as difficult as you would think. You just need a couple of things. One, you need your DAW of choice. Now this is different for a lot of people. So I can't really go over the specifics of how to do it in each DAW, but I am going to talk about the program that you will need to make it happen. So for those of you who are familiar with working with audio in a studio format, they have consoles where you're routing in an input, you're changing the gain, and if you want to add any effects, you normally have to patch into the effect box and patch back out into wherever you're going. So we need a digital equivalent of a patch cable, basically, something that's going to take the audio from our DAW and put it into OBS. And there is a great freeware program that I think Annie might have mentioned, someone brought up in a previous tech talk, called the VB Virtual Cable Audio. Let me grab that here. So this is it, vbaudio.com. And Annie, maybe you can grab this and put it in the chat for people just so they can have the link. It's they've got a free version of it that gives you 1 cable, which is actually all you need to pull this off. So I've never needed to buy the full version of the program. If you do need more cables, they've got an A and B and a C and D. So you can get up to 5 different patch cables, digital patch cables in your computer. And what you do is you download this, and it becomes, your computer thinks that the virtual cable input is a recording device, and it thinks that the virtual cable output is an input device, is the end of that device. So if I put something into the input, it comes out the output, is basically what happens. So what that means with a DAW is, if we go over here, I use Adobe Audition as my DAW. And the way that you route sources here is you've got an input and an output. So for my input, I've actually selected my the line in from my audio interface, and as the output, I've selected the input of this patch cable. So now what that's doing, I'm record enabling and monitoring so that it's sending my signal from my input to my output. And now what I've done over here in OBS is when I add a new source, like audio capture, we'll just name it anything, doesn't really matter. You see that one of my options, now that I've downloaded that program, is cable output. So that is the output of that input we just had from our DAW. So I can select that and hit OK. And now if we transition over to this scene here, we'll be able to see all of our different audio sources that we have. And we can see the one we just created, the audio input capture, is now receiving signal from the microphones behind me. And that is because it is going in through my audio interface, into my DAW, and then out to the cable input, and then through the cable output, and then when I hit start streaming, that all gets packaged and sent up to Facebook. Now, you might be asking, well, if I could just add effects in OBS, why the heck do it in your DAW? Well, number one, the reason I already told you, which is that you can just record a much higher quality version of the audio. The other thing that's really helpful about doing it in your DAW is that you can actually add the effects in your DAW rather than in OBS. So I can come over to my effects rack, which is here, and I can do the same thing. I can find my VSTs. I can choose the ones I want. I can set them up the way I want them to be. And now I'm actually routing, this effect is routing to OBS already, so I don't have to do anything in OBS. But what's really cool about this is, let's say I went over to that live stream and later I heard like, dang, I had way too much reverb on me. It sounds a little silly. If I was doing it through OBS directly, that would be it. I would have no way of getting rid of some of that reverb. You know, it would have been already recorded that way. Too bad. But if you do it in your DAW, you can just come in here after you've recorded and edit your effects, like bring down the reverb. Maybe I didn't want 8%, maybe 4% is more what I wanted. And I can just do it like that. So you have the ability to come back later and change things. So that's really the benefit of routing it through your DAW, is just having a higher quality audio and also then being able to edit it later to your satisfaction. So I'm going to do one more quick version, unless Annie wants to jump in here with any questions. This one's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to, I'm just going to say that this part of it is definitely more advanced, and you need to probably have some knowledge of how your DAW works, right? Your own digital audio workstation. And so this is what you're showing here is pretty specific to Adobe Audition, but you know, the concept is the same for other digital audio workstations. And I can just say from my own experience that you can go out to, you know, you can Google these things for your own workstation and find on YouTube some demos of this that I think, you know, but you can also rewatch this. But do you mind just sort of doing the walkthrough one more time?
I'll just do a step-by-step recap of what we talked about.
Yeah, because the input-output thing is still confusing, I think.
Yeah, it is a little bit confusing. So if you are wanting to integrate OBS with your DAW, here's what you're going to need. Step one, you're going to need some sort of virtual patch cable. So I recommend this VB Audio. It's free for one of them. It works very well. They've got it for both Mac and Windows. So you can just come here, you can download the program, install it, restart your computer so that your computer figures out everything, and then come back in. Now, once you do that, you're going to open up your DAW, and you're going to route whatever your input is. Let's say you've got, you know, Scarlett or some sort of audio interface on your desk. You're going to route that as the input. And then as the output, you're going to want the input of the virtual audio cable. Basically, like you're plugging in that patch cable into your DAW so that you can send the signal somewhere else. And then all you have to do at that point is come on over to OBS, add an audio source, audio input capture, just like you always would. And now you're going to look for the one that says cable output, VB audio virtual cable. So this is the output. This is basically going to mirror. The input and the output are the same on this program. That's what they're doing. They're a patch cable. So you just select that output, hit OK, and then you'll have your audio source routing audio from your DAW. Now, a couple notes of caution. It is important that, oops, wrong program. It is important that you record enable and also monitor because you need to be sending signal through the output. Monitoring in a DAW basically is like when you need to listen to yourself while you're recording. So in this case, we need the audio to be sending to the output while we're recording. we don't want it to not send it anywhere. So that's why the input monitoring is required to get signal in OBS. So if you're doing all these steps and you're confused as to why you're not seeing these little bouncy lines here, it's because you're probably not monitoring. Now, another common pitfall is that certain drivers or like programs that sort of tell a device how to communicate with a computer like to take complete control of all of the routing. So for those of you, this is going to be a little bit more advanced, and a Google search will definitely help you with this. But for those of you who are familiar with ASIO drivers, which is a common driver for audio devices, your device class, if it's ASIO, it's usually going to like to take complete control. So you have to be careful. With Adobe Audition, there are a couple other options. You can see I can do ASIO, I can do the MME, or this built-in Windows one. MME is also a Windows native one. I'm sure there are some for Apple as well. And what MME allows me to do is actually individually route the input and the output so that I can have the input from my audio interface and the output to the virtual cable, and it not trying to take control and select both for me. That's going to be different for every DAW, which is why this is a little bit more complicated to teach. It's very specific to your DAW and whatever interface you're using. So if this is all too complicated, don't worry, because there is a very easy way for you to add effects. You can just go here, right-click, go to Filters, select your effect, done. That's the easiest way. If you want to try this, it's there for you to try integrating with the DAW. The final thing I want to talk about is just if you're really wanting to make a commitment and put in a little bit of money, there's a device that I kind of purchased for myself when I started doing these live streams a while back. It is a audio interface. It's made by Universal Audio. They have a lot of different models. I think the one that makes the most sense for someone who's looking to do live streams is this one here. And this is the Apollo Twin. It's basically just a preamp, a glorified preamp with two inputs, very, very nice inputs. And that's perfect for most situations. You can see that in my live stream setup right now, I've just got a matched stereo pair of AKG C414s. And they're just routing into those two inputs as a stereo input. And that's what I use for basically all of my live streams, because I'm live streaming classical musicians, jazz musicians, mostly like pretty much entirely acoustic musicians. So just having those room mics is usually going to get the best sound for me. The other really cool thing about the Apollo Twin that's different from other audio interfaces is, number one, Apollo or Universal Audio, the makers of the Apollo Twin, are really well known for their plugins, for their VST plugins. They have great sounding plugins. They can be very pricey, but the cool thing about buying one of their interfaces is it comes with a package. You get the device, and then you also get about 10 different VSTs with the device. And what's also really cool is if you buy the device used, like I did, you can actually, like those VSTs come along with it. So you don't have to worry about buying used and not getting access to those. So the reverb plugin that I use, the compression plugin that I use, all came from that pack that I got with this device. And then the other really cool thing is this device works, you can get models that work with both Windows and Mac. It has a chip in it that actually does real-time effects processing. So if you've got a computer that is struggling to deal with, actually recording the video and streaming at the same time, and if it's using up all of your processing power, this device will actually act as a computer and process the effects on its own. So that can be a benefit too for people who are experiencing issues like that. The other cool thing is that you can really easily get effects onto the signal without even having to worry about a DAW or anything. So I'm going to show you how to do that really quickly, because when you buy this device, you download something called Console, which is basically just like the digital interface, like how you work with the device digitally. And it kind of looks like a DAW. You've got all the buttons you'd expect. Mute, solo, you can adjust your gain, do all that stuff. But you also have an effects rack, these inserts. So I can just come here, go down to reverb, find my reverb, and bam. It's now going directly, like my audio is coming from my mics into my interface, and it's being applied to the signal at that point, which means that there's no need to do anything in OBS. There's no need to do anything with your DAW. It's literally just going straight into OBS with the signal you want. But again, it's not the cheapest device. It has other benefits because you don't just use it for live stream. It's really great for recording, really great for really just nice to have something physical on your desk to route your audio, and kind of just, have a volume knob there. But yeah, that takes a little bit more effort on the monetary side, but is also a very good option. So I think that's all I wanted to talk about were those 3 ways of doing it. Again, there are so many possible ways to do it, and other people will have different ways. But I wanted to give 3 kind of levels of complexity that all have different benefits. So choose whatever's going to work for you. Give it a try. Stick with it. Google is your best friend when something's not working. So yeah. Anything you want me to finish up with, Annie, or should we just head on over to question and answer?
Yeah, I'm good with Q&A. I think it's great. There's a couple of questions in the chat, and I just want to the Palo Twin. Real quick on that. So I went and Googled it, and the link that I posted in the chat was actually the Apollo Twin X. It looks exactly like the one you have. But do you know anything about does that just mean?
Yeah, so the thing that's tricky about the Apollo is there are about 5 different models.
Yeah, excellent.
And it has to do with what kind of computer you have.
Oh.
So you need to look at the fine print as to what the type of connection is. So the one that I use is the Apollo Twin USB, because I am a Windows guy. I have USB ports on my computer. That's what I need. They have ones that are Thunderbolt, which is what you would use for Mac. Yeah. And then they have ones that are also Thunderbolt, but the type of Thunderbolt that can work for both Mac and computers if you happen to have a Windows computer that has a Thunderbolt card. It gets really complicated pretty quick. So just make sure that whenever you're looking at this device, you know what kind of ports you have on your computer, and just match that up with the type of ports that it says that it's meant to connect with. And you should be fine.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty good sale going on right now with a lot of value.
Yeah, I think new it usually retails for about $900, and you can find it used on Reverb for around $600 if you're lucky. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So a question that came up, which I think was very good, that somebody mentioned, how do you deal with, and I'm paraphrasing, but how do you deal with latency issues?
Oh yeah, good question. So there's so many ways to deal with a single issue. So it's really finding what works well for you, but let me just take you through a few of them. One of them is that OBS actually has a built-in way of addressing latency. You can actually delay your video, and I haven't had to do this in a while, so let me just poke around for a sec.
Yeah, I actually think that this was covered in one of our earlier OBS tutorials, but for me, it was like figuring out how much delay to,
Yeah.
the millisecond, the guessing game of how many milliseconds do you need to adjust or offset, and I don't know.
Yeah. Man, I'm sorry, I don't actually remember where it is. If you just Google how to delay video in OBS, it'll just give you the routing. But there definitely is a way in OBS. The way that I deal with it, you can do it through OBS, or you can do it if you're using a DAW. That's how I deal with it, because you can set your latency in a DAW just like you would for any recording session.
Yeah, Charles said you can use your DAW to figure out the delay time. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And to be honest, the way that I line it up is I just do trial and error. So if I am I'll just do a recording, I'll set up everything, and then I'll start a recording. I'll go up to the microphones, I'll clap as a sync point, and then I'll go back and I'll just listen to, is the clap visually and orally the same, or is one ahead or behind, and then I'll just adjust accordingly.
And you do this by stream, or you do this by doing it, by recording in OBS, or do you record?
Yeah, I just start recording, because this, when you stream or when you record in OBS, it's really doing the same thing. Just in one case, it's sending it to a file on your computer, and in one case, it's sending it to the internet, wherever you're telling it to go.
Yeah.
So you can test by doing it that way without having to set up a whole live stream.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. We've been using OBS to record like just our sound checks, just going
Yeah.
like figuring out how it sounds. And yeah.
Yep. And that's a good way to test your effects too. Like if you want to make sure that you've got the reverb level you want, just record it and see how it sounds, because that's what people will hear.
Nice. Okay. And Charlie, you had another question that I wanted to get to, but I'm going to make you raise your hand and ask it. And I see Brant Miller's got his hand up. So, all right. You don't have the raise hand. That's right. Okay. Charlie, you're next. Brant, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. Hey, Jacob. I was wondering how. I do have a DAW Studio One, and it has a lot of effects. Would they most likely be VSTs that I could access through OBS? And how would I be able to do that? I mean, what's the process?
Yeah, so they should be VSTs. Along and try this method and they're not there, or have you not tried yet?
I haven't tried it yet. I'd go up, or if I'd have to move them somewhere to be accessible by.
The first step would just be to look and see. Usually these programs scan, putting your audio input, right-clicking, going to filters, and then hopefully they will be there. Again, I think Google, they aren't showing up, or maybe you need to set up some. Oftentimes these programs are undoubtedly someone else has run into the same problem.
I'll check it out. I also have some external, that has reverb, and I've hooked that up, and through the chain, I also have the Persona tube preamp for one mic. It can only use for one mic, so I've been using that for the one mic. Although the reverb levels are very, I find that even on the most simple reverb, the lowest, smallest room, at the lowest level, it will be a lot. So I don't know what the system would be doing that would make it sound really, at a one setting out of 100, it's still sometimes sounds like there's too much reverb. So I'm not sure if that's something that you would know offhand why that is, or.
I don't offhand, because I would have to know how it's hooked up necessarily, and also I'm not familiar with the unit. I think that's why I tend to prefer the digital ones for this, because I feel like I can have a little bit more of a fine-tuned control. I think it's definitely possible. I mean, that is a way of getting effects in. I'm not sure why it's taking over completely. And there may be a way of inputting it only into part of the signal, so you have a completely wet signal and a completely dry signal, and then you can mix it yourself. I just don't know what your routing looks like. So
so if we wanted to use reverb just on Zoom, let's say we wanted to have it when we're doing a straight Zoom performance, not through any other, will this stuff also be usable straight through Zoom, like the?
Yeah, it won't be usable straight through Zoom because Zoom doesn't have the same filter property. But I think you guys have probably talked about this in a previous tech stream, and if you haven't, there's a way of using OBS as your webcam. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, well, we had a tech talk on that just a couple of weeks back. So.
There's you can download a little plugin that goes with OBS called Virtual Cam.
Yep.
And that will just, if you download that, basically that virtual cam will just show up as an option when you click that little up arrow next to your camera options. Yep. And so anything you apply to, and then you'll also have it in your audio options, right? So you need to route it for both. Then anything you apply to OBS will go through Zoom. So that would be the way to make all of this work with Zoom if that's how you're performing.
Did that make sense, Brand? Okay. So I kind of was following along, and I went ahead and opened, because Cubase, I use Cubase, and Cubase comes with plugins, reverb, just, not plugins, but effects, just some basic stuff. Mm-hmm. And, after you said that OBS should sort of detect that kind of stuff, I went looking because I didn't realize this, and it did actually give me that VST2.x plugin option. But then in the middle section where when you clicked, please select a plugin, and you had this big, huge list, I got nothing. Does that mean? there's probably so I don't even know why it recognized any kind of VST plugins if it's not finding anything. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be it's tricky because when you're talking about plugins that come with your DAW, it really depends on the DAW.
They could be
And
yeah.
some DAWs may not want you to use their plugins outside of the DAW.
Oh, those nasty people.
So when when you're working with tech, you're always confronted with these issues of like, it's really what you do after you see the issue. Don't just give up, because just because it's not there doesn't mean that it's not possible, right? And I think like looking into, is there a way to get OBS to recognize DAW effects for this specific DAW? Because there are going to be different reasons that it wouldn't for different DAWs. Like it might be protected, it might just be an accident, right? Like it might just be buried in a folder somewhere. And if all of that fails, you've still got the option to just go find a freeware one. Got it. So, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm pasting something that Oscar pasted.
Yeah, no problem.
Like things, but Tegan asked about, she's using Logic, and I'm just same basic concept. Like we're just asking, this should be fairly similar, right? I'm assuming you haven't tried Logic or
no Windows all the way.
Yeah. So so Tegan, I can only say give it a whirl. I'm assuming it looks the same, but if you're anything like me with Cubase, I like literally Googled Cubase and OBS, and I think audio effects. I can't remember what I did, but and I found a YouTube video that kind of was very specific to my DAW, so I think that will be helpful. Charlie, what's your question?
Unmute. Well, real quickly, I just checked on those plugins, and my third-party plugins in Cubase showed up, but nothing from Cubase. And then there was another thing on the sync offset. If you go to advanced audio properties in your audio mixer, you'll see the sync offset. But my question is, I just chased that down while people were talking about other stuff. My question is, do the VST plugins add a load to your data output on the stream? Does it increase your...
No, they shouldn't. So whatever you have your audio output set to as far as like bit rate, it's going to keep it consistent. It's just it's gonna do all the processing before it packages it. Okay. So the only load that would be added is to your CPU as it's processing those effects, which is why I mentioned with the Apollo Twin, it's really handy that it has an onboard chip that can handle that processing if you're running into those issues. To be honest, most modern computers should be able to handle it just fine. But if you are running into those issues, you've got that. Cool. Yeah, that's a good question.
Cool. All right. Brant, did you not put your hand down? Is that what it was? Okay, that's fine. I didn't grab it. Or do you have another question? Okay, cool. Not other questions. There's a lot going on in the chat, and I was trying to keep up with it, guys. So I'm going to try and make sure to share some things as they come along. But these are just Oscar's out here, and I know he's done some of this work as well. Jacob, if you haven't met Mr. Bittinger, where he's a fellow Michigander in the Grand Rapids area.
Nice.
He's done a lot of this kind of stuff. And he was talking about maybe having to move to a preferred folder, which I think you mentioned that. Yeah, maybe we'll have to get you back here, JOB, to talk about some stuff. Yes. So I think you guys raise your hand if you have any other questions, because I either you've stumped them completely, or this was such a great, I think it's mostly that it was such a great talk that everybody's dying to go and try it.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of information, and what I hope you guys are taking away is that there are different levels of difficulty and input time. So like just to get an effect on your live stream is not too difficult. And then if you want to explore further, you're welcome to, but you can just stay at whatever level makes sense for you. You don't have to buy into an expensive device. Like, do whatever is going to work the best for your setup.
Chuck, I see it. It depends on when you emailed it, but if you emailed it after 1:30, I didn't get it, but I can go look. Do you want to just ask your question, Chuck? Raise your hand if you do. If you don't, I will look at my email because it's going to be right here. Da-da. No, I do not see a question from Chuck.
Well, you can just ask it then.
Sorry, do you want to just ask? There you are. Hi, Chuck.
I
Hey, sorry about that, bud.
I was having some very strange issues with compression, I think, in OBS, and I wasn't applying it. I'm using a USB mixer, a Mackie mixer, and OBS, and I noticed at the end of songs, just as the last notes on my guitar were decaying, there'd be a sudden jump in volume, and I can't trace it. I haven't added any compression anywhere along the chain, but I'm wondering if this is a function of Facebook or YouTube, where they're applying the compression, and then as the volume drops below a certain threshold, it releases the compression. There's no need for it, and it
Yeah.
just
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, so social media, they will change, they will do things to the audio. It shouldn't affect it that much. It really should be subtle. So, I mean, I guess I can just tell you, whenever I'm faced with an issue, like I'm hearing this thing, I don't know where it's coming from. I basically am just racking my brain, like, how can I pinpoint every single connection point? Like, how can I look without having, so for you, you've got your mic running to your mixer running to your computer, your computer talking to OBS, like the mixer is talking to OBS, and then you've got the OBS talking to wherever you're streaming. So if you can pinpoint at which connection point the issue arises, then you're going to be able to solve it much more quickly. That's what I always do, is like, so I would start like, is there a way of just like monitoring straight from your board? And then if there's a way of just like plugging in headphones and hearing what's coming out of the board before it goes into the computer, if it sounds good there, all right, we know it's nowhere in that chain of stuff. The mics are fine, the cable's fine, the board is fine. Then you have to do like, can I monitor it before it goes into OBS? And if you can listen in at that point somehow, like if there's some interface that you can listen to before it goes into OBS, listen there. And then you can monitor in OBS, and then Facebook. And if you finally get to Facebook and it's like good all the way until Facebook, then you definitely know it is on Facebook side, right? Or it's at that communication point between OBS and Facebook. So, I mean, that it happens to me all the time. Like I do the same set of things, or I think I do the same set of things, and then something sounds different. And I have to go like, okay, where the heck along the chain is this happening? And then, restart that certain connection, see if it works, and then go from there. It's frustrating. I'm sorry it's happening to you. That's the best advice I can give you, because I don't know where it could be.
Yeah.
So
when you're not in there, but I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Jacob.
no, you're fine. That was basically it.
Yeah, no, so there's a couple of suggestions in the chat here from Oscar. He's asking if you've got a gate on somewhere, and I think similarly, Robert also said auto level adjust active somewhere. So, questions about, things there that are, which I think is kind of a lot what you just said, Jacob. And Sherry,
Right.
I'm going to unmute you and have you say what you're talking about, because I'm not sure. Chuck, I'm sorry. Was that was your question that you didn't get an answer to? No. Sorry, you got it. You got a very good answer. Good luck with that. Sorry. Sherry, go ahead and I'm not following necessarily what we're.
Well, when I first started streaming, which was, I guess, a year ago now, I used the gear that I had on hand in my studio, which would have been a mixing board. I did condenser mics plugged into the mixing board, out of that into the interface, which happened to be an iRig stream, and then straight into whatever the streaming platform was. So I could add the reverb from my board. And that way I could just reach over without being distracted and just pull down the fader when I was talking and bring it back up. So I only mention that because I feel like reverb is so important in live streams that I want people to know that they don't necessarily have to go through a DAW, have to go through OBS or any of those things, which has been really handy to learn about more specifically. And you did a brilliant job. So that's very useful, but I want everybody to feel like they can add reverb so that we all get better live streams to listen to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I do want to point out too that what you're talking about requires a certain type of equipment too. So for a lot of people, I think the common piece of equipment in a live streaming setup is a computer. So I think having like a computer and a basic way of getting audio into that computer. So for some people, it may just be the mic that's built into the computer, and at that level, you do need to do effect applying in the computer. That's kind of the most basic way for anyone to do it. I think it's great to have, like you said, having that external device that you can use reverb, you can apply reverb there, is probably going to be a lot easier than having to go into the computer. But that does require that you have a device that already can do that, which not everyone does. So
yeah, I've counseled a few people just to get little 2-channel or 4-channel mixers that have reverb. It's not the greatest sounding reverb, but it's better than nothing.
Right,
and
that's
some
that's
sort
kind
of
of what,
mic.
Yeah, that's kind of what the Apollo Twin does too. Just at probably a higher level than like a mixer like that would do. But there are so many devices that have built-in effects that you can do that. So I think that's a good option for people if they want to, purchase something that they might not already have for that. But if you want to do it just straight digitally for free, that is also an option.
Yeah.
Right.
Just depends on your comfort level and what you want to spend.
Yeah.
And I would say to Chuck that you can bet it has to do with the live stream and the platform,
Yes.
because they all have so many compressions and gates and things to, yeah.
I swear to God, I think, thanks, Sherry. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think that there's probably nothing more arbitrarily frustrating than 3 different people being on a Zoom call and all having their settings correct and all using basically some form of interface or microphone, and all of it being different and levels being different, and nothing like and even the next time you log in, it could be different than the last time your settings are. There's so many variables, I think is the word.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, Jacob, I just have to say that I'm very excited about this tech talk, and I'm very excited to go and try this, because now I feel like I think I have a grasp on it. Plus I know how to find you. But if any, speaking of finding this really smart fellow, I'm going to put links in the chat to Jacob's website. And this is all about his music, because he doesn't do that. He's a full-time musician and an amazing one. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share this, because I think you do a fabulous job with it. I'm going to let you get the last word. If you have any final thoughts on this before we wrap up with our usual farewell. But
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks to everyone for coming, and thanks to everyone for watching and your questions. Yeah. And I guess the final thing I'd say is that as good as you get at doing this tech stuff, stuff is always going to go wrong. And so it's just having a plan when stuff goes wrong that makes you better at it. And I'd say that plan is really knowing how to just pick apart the chain of signal. Just being able to think like, okay, if I'm thinking about my audio, it starts with my instrument. Where does it go next? And just being able to go step by step, because if you're able to do that, you'll figure out where the issue is, and then you can search very specifically rather than just going like, my audio sounds bad in OBS. You can be like, when my audio goes from here to here in OBS, this is happening. So really, what makes you better at this is just calming yourself and being like, I can figure out where it's happening. I don't know why it's happening, but I can figure out where it's happening and start there. I think that would be my last piece of advice.
I love it. It's great. It's great. All right. Well, this is the point where I could go into gallery view and let everybody wiggle their hands. And are y'all ready for this? This is, if you don't want to be seen on Facebook or YouTube, this is a time for you to mute your camera. This is your warning. But Right now we're going into gallery view. Everybody say yay. Thank you, Jacob, so much.
Thank you.
Don't forget, we've got a couple more things happening. I believe there might be one vacant slot for Brandon O'Sullivan tomorrow's for mentor sessions. So if you don't know about that, go ahead and sign up. We also have tomorrow night folk DJ and friends peer group session. And on Thursday, we have another edition of our emotional support peer group session, which is something we just started doing the week before last. Charlie Mossberg is running the peer group session for those who just want to talk about, mental health, wellness, and share their feelings and not talk about tech for an hour. Tech is good, but overwhelming and crazy. And, in a judgment-free zone with your peers. Tears are fine. Anyway, thank you all so very, very much. We will, and thanks again, Jacob. We'll see you guys soon. Stay in touch. Watch for announcements and newsletters coming to your inbox shortly. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And thanks.
Bye.
Thanks again.